Call the Board of Works meeting to order, and we'll have roll call.
Cam Collier.
Here.
Bill Carbach.
Here.
Ken Meyer.
Here. And you were all emailed a copy of the minutes from our previous meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept as email.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. That's carried. Okay. Is there anything else that I forgot before I go into this last? Oh yes. We were also emailed a copy of the minutes from the special meeting we had last Wednesday. Did I have a...
I have a motion to accept the minutes as emailed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That's carried also. Nate, you ready to go? Certainly. Oh, yeah. I have your name beside a couple of things here, and one of them I put down on the agenda about a week ago. I don't even remember what it's about exactly, but I had Nate, and beside it I have sump pumps.
Oh, yes. Something we've been considering for some time, and it's been brought up in the past, is the potential for a sump pump, some sort of a sump pump ordinance. There's been different communities have had different approaches to trying to deal with clear water connections into their city sanitary sewer system. Over the years, we've had issues with homeowners connecting sump pumps into their sanitary sewer system after construction, or potentially during construction, depending on the age of the actual structure. Different communities have had different approaches to this. Some have had kind of a fairly forceful approach to saying, we know there's an issue in this neighborhood, we're going to send our contractors onto your home, and you're going to let us into your basement to look at it, and we're going to cite you, and you're going to disconnect. That's not the approach that we're looking at here. There are some communities that what they have is they require essentially a pre-sale inspection is what they'll call it. And at that point, prior to transferring the name of your utilities from the seller to the buyer, you have to get essentially a certified letter from a plumber, building inspector, or other person. We're still kind of working out the language that has inspected the plumbing, if there's a basement or crawl space, and says the sump pump is connected legally per city ordinance such and such. That would be essentially filed when they change the utilities over to the new person, and then we wouldn't transfer the utilities or turn them on for the new owner until such time that we receive that. That's essentially what we're bouncing around as an idea as far as how to do that. Now, it's been done in a couple of communities. We have a draft essentially penciled from some other community, but we want to see if there's interest in doing that. That's essentially a slow process. It doesn't target one individual area. It picks up a property at transfer at sales. The city doesn't send in their own employees, so we're not insuring people to enter into homes to do the inspections. We're using essentially the licensed plumbers or building inspectors to do that sort of work. It's been an issue for us. We know that we've got connections. The scale is fairly minor, but as we've discussed in the past, we're trying to find every little way we can to try to reduce other capital expenses when there's certain detriments that we have. I mean, if you have a hot slab on grade, you don't have an issue, but if your home has a basement and you don't know where the sump pump drains to, that becomes a potential issue for both you as the homeowner and for the city who ends up treating that groundwater.
My home is a prime example. It's about 80 years old, and when I moved in about 27 years ago, the sump pump emptied right into the drain, which went right out to the street.
Goes to the street. At one time, that was legal. I mean, that was the customary method.
And the first time my basement flooded, I think it was Roger or Verlin or someone advised me, well, you need to run that outside. So, yeah, we drilled through every floor joist and ran PVC pipe to clear out to the back. Now I get this black hose that hangs out in my backyard, dumps out in my backyard. So.
And for the most part, it's never an issue. Some people aren't going to like that. They like that it goes away into a drain tile, but there are many homes that don't have access to a storm sewer adjacent to their house that they can connect to. Others do. So it's going to be a case-by-case scenario. I'd hate to go through and say, I mean, our ordinance already says that that's not allowed. but it's essentially creating a mechanism that it allows for some method of compliance.
So when someone sells their home, how would they know they had to do that? What would be the,
Essentially, the process of what we'd end up doing is still kind of in flux. What we'd be looking at doing is trying to meet with some of the realtors in the area so they're aware that this is, that we're discussing this ordinance, essentially, what the language is, how they're going to approach it. We'd probably want to develop our inspection forms so that it's very easy for everyone. Here's the form, when you're getting an inspection done on the house, which we would recommend anybody that does, they need to fill this out and bring this to the city, signed by your plumber, when you want to transfer your utilities. And then our utilities clerks would check the form, make sure that it's complete, and that's signed. Essentially, it's on the plumbers that they're essentially honor bound, that they're doing what they said. They've got a license, both building inspectors and plumbers, that they'd be essentially certifying against. So that kind of keeps them honest, essentially.
You're going to have to do a good job of educating, because
we don't want to just pass something like this and quietly. It's going to have to be a process of trying to educate people.
I wouldn't recommend that you limit it just to the realtors. You need to involve the lenders. You need to involve even the bar association, because if you have, let's say you have a cash deal and there's no realtor, maybe it's a friend that's selling to a friend or a family member, somehow you've got to be able to make sure that people are aware that that's going to be something that's required.
I think what you do is you jam it up at the utilities when some property is changed. In other words, when a person comes in or calls up and says, my utilities have to be changed to so-and-so, I think at that point you react. In other words, you go and you say, okay, this home has to be inspected by your plumber or whatever, but it gems up there.
Well, it may be better that you do it after the fact, because what you could do then is you could say that if you don't provide it within a certain period of time, then you run the risk that services will be disconnected.
Exactly.
So there's some way to enforce it, and it's not, because if you have a situation where a closing occurs, the seller is going to contact the utilities and say, give me a final reading, and the buyer then has to transfer the utilities into the buyer's name, otherwise the buyer has the risk of the property services being cut off, in which case then you have to pay a reconnect fee. So it might be easier to do it after the transfer.
And the concern is that if there is an issue with the plumbing, then the buyer, which usually what we end up having is the buyer, it wasn't disclosed prior to the sale, so the buyer ends up with a property that needs, even if it's $100 in repiping. I just bought this house. Well, now you're telling me that there's something wrong. So we're trying to preempt that process, if at all possible, so that the person who actually has the issue, which would be the seller, is the one accountable. There's a number of different methods as far as penalizing someone who doesn't provide that, whether we say we're not going to turn on the water at the transfer, or if it's not within 30 days of the turn on, there may be a penalty that we build into the utility rates, where we add a 10% surcharge in the utility bill. That's all language that's out there as something that we can consider. But we want to put that out there because for us, it's not $1 million project. This is essentially us working out the details, and this could measure in the tens or hundreds of thousands of gallons of clear water that's getting into our system that we have to detain somewhere or hold back during heavy rain. And every little bit helps, essentially, and a lot of these start at the home.
One home doesn't seem like much, but when it all adds up.
They sell sump pumps that'll put 100 gallons a minute out, and I know with the rains we had last summer, mine ran straight for about an hour and a half, and about that far from coming up under the carpet pad, so it was doing everything on bailing at the same time. So these can put out a lot of water in a bad circumstance, and the water you're pumping out in the sump pump into sanitary sewer may be coming out of somebody else's toilet. And so, because you're pressurizing a gravity system, that's not how it's supposed to work. So these consequences start to roll downhill no pun intended, but we want to try to find ways to intercept that. It's complicated, it's messy, but it's personal, and so there's engineering behind it, but we're trying to open up the ideas because it's not just a project. We can put a tank in there, but we got to borrow the money, own and operate it, and then you're going to have more homes that continue to connect. We've got more water we got to detain. It's just we're kind of avoiding the issue because this can be complicated. So we want to discuss it. There's no timeline. It's not a mandate, but the sooner we do something and the more thought we put into it, the better product I think we'll have. So.
And you can also give the new homeowner time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like,
It's
this
really
is going on
all-
for 10 or 15 years. You can tell them this has to be done at a
Correct.
certain time.
And what what the hope is that, I mean, Tim, how many homes change hands in 1 year in Decatur? I mean, where we look at maybe 100 homes? I mean, we've got quite a few utilities.
With basements and sub pumps, that's,
Yeah,
I mean, it's going to be a percent of
right.
it's going to vary from year to year.
30%, just depending on the year. We may have 100 homes that get inspected, and maybe there's 10% of that. You know,
Yeah.
That's 10 homes. That's 1,000
Why don't you
gallons a
put,
minute.
why don't you put all this into a procedure on paper,
Sure.
and then we'll talk about it again.
Yeah, we'll draft
It's a
something
good,
out
it's a
for
good,
an
it's a good
option.
thought, and it's a good idea. I don't think anybody's disagreeing with it.
No,
So,
it's something to consider. I think that it's one method that's probably the least, you're going to get the least resistance. Many of the communities that say, we're going to come into this targeted neighborhood and we're going to inspect everybody. Usually you end up having to pay for the homeowner's repairs to try to justify it, and even then you get resistance. So and
You're
that's
going
still-
to get resistance even with this, trust
Yes,
me.
I don't deny that.
You're going to have realtors upset, you're going to have owners upset.
So, but
But, I understand, I completely agree, but
But they also need to understand that what they're doing is potentially increasing the cost to the entire
absolutely.
community.
I mean, you think about those fixes, the storm drains that were replaced because of the manhole covers that were replaced, the smoke testing, all those things are significant. And I mean, you said it's not a mandate, but it kind of is.
it's...
We're under a mandate to
Correctly.
fix the problem.
Yeah. They're not saying to do this, but this is a smart, low-cost option for us to take, and I think we'd be foolish not to consider it, at least.
yeah.
So in one word, sump pumps, there.
One word, that's all I had.
That's all right.
I got a couple other things here.
Sure.
I mean, some of them are what you asked me about. I think at the last meeting, you had asked the question, and it never got answered, and that was about the topographic survey over on First Street.
Correct.
Yeah.
We were looking at going ahead and proceeding with the topographic survey behind the Macklin property because it's a gap in our survey. The general consensus, I believe, was to go ahead and move forward with it. I don't know that there was a motion
I don't think we
to
made a motion,
proceed
yeah.
with that. The total price from Miller Land Surveying was, I believe, $975 to move forward on that. There was also, and part of that as well was to proceed with a geotechnical boring to look at the soils immediately behind that because we didn't have a boring for that location. I have a price from Alton Woodsick to add another boring. It's $2,435. That's time and material. We're concerned that we're going to have rubble in that area because there's been debris, construction debris, concrete dumped on the bank to try to stabilize it. That's been a method for years. So talking to the engineer, we're estimating we're going to put 1 day. If we can't get a boring effectively in 1 day, it's something we're probably just going to have to ignore because we're assuming we're going to get refusal. So I'm hoping it'll be less than that. What's that?
Who was doing that work?
Alton Woodsick Engineering makes their proposal.
Woodsick? Yeah. That's what you sent me the email about today, right? Yeah, I printed that off.
Why are you assuming that you're going to get a refusal?
There's been, what I've been told is that for years people have dumped concrete debris,
their
either
proposal.
from excess concrete along the bank to stabilize it, try to armor the bank, whether it's rock or old foundations, brick. So if we go in there to try to bore it, a split stream sampler, essentially they drive that. It's like an open tube that they'll drive into the soil. Well, you hit concrete or stone,
Okay.
it'll refuse
So
that.
refusal is a technical term for...
Yeah,
It's a refusal to do it on
Yeah,
the
well,
property.
that's not refusing to do it. It's, you hit a rock and you can't drive a steel straw essentially through a yard of concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, no.
Good question.
That's a trade term they throw around, sorry.
Refusal.
So you have both of these things that you wanted to, I mean, now, then you asked the question to me on the email, and
Like a doctor's thing here.
and that is, both of these are under the $2,500.
So I don't know.
Is it something that you even need to come to the Board of Works
Yeah,
about?
I don't want to bother the Board of Works with not...
And I don't want to hold you up from making
$2,400.
progress over there either.
Regardless, I mean, we can...
But if this is a contract,
Oh, we-
they probably need to approve it.
Okay.
At least the mayor
Is that-
sign on behalf of the board of
Sure.
works.
Okay.
So I'll motion to approve both the geotechnical survey and, and topographical.
And give the mayor authority to sign the contract.
All in favor? Is that on one motion here?
Yeah.
Okay. And second?
I'll second and...
Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yeah. All right.
Where, there we
We
go.
just put motion to count for both.
Okay, so that was the second thing. And the next thing, again, I kind of got notes here, but I'm not sure exactly. We talked about water line placement on First Street. And then you'd actually mentioned that to me also, I think, about,
Oh, we checked, there was some discussion, Nate, at one time, and I don't know if this was when we were still talking about going down First Street, whether it made sense to replace any water lines, and I don't know if because if I understand that this has evolved a little bit, you're now going to use the existing sewer that is there as the relief sewer, at least on the south side of Monroe Street. And
Correct.
then you're going to put in a new relief sewer from that point on, is that right?
That was actually installed in the mid-'80s as a relief sewer.
Okay. At the time they were talking about putting the sewer line down First Street, there was some discussion about relocating the water line
The water line
underneath
was-
the sidewalk as
the
opposed
west
to,
side.
yeah. Is
Yeah.
that
That
something?
essentially, we don't need to, the only area where we're going to cross or parallel the water line was on First Street north of Monroe. But even then, what we've since made some modifications to the alignment to avoid a gas line, which would put us close to a 12-inch water line on that area. So we're going to shift closer to the bank building on the east side of the road. That helps us avoid that. Now, we will be paralleling a 14-inch original water main from the river crossing in that bank parking lot. We are 30 feet away from it, but there's still the potential that may, it just kind of depends on its condition. We're going to be doing excavation work next to it, so there's some contingency there, but we're not anticipating replacing that as part of the project. It may need to be repaired, but we're not going to put it into the design documents that they must replace this.
What about in terms of other projects? Does it make sense to keep water lines in the street versus under a sidewalk? Is there a benefit one way or the other?
If you can put them under the sidewalk, it's a little, it all plays into how you do your street design. If you're having landscaping and trees in the utility strips, then you're planting a nice big tree on top of the water line, and it may look good when the tree's 2 inches in diameter, but when it's 3 feet in diameter and the root system surrounds the water main, if you have a break or a leak in the water main, the tree roots go for that and surround that and may open the water main up. We'd have to look, and I don't think, the city hasn't created a standard set of road profile details as far as for new construction. There are some general conventions in between other cities that we could utilize, but it's nice to try to keep those out from under the pavement, because if you have a leak, you're taking some sidewalk out, you're not tearing a lane of the street up for a day or two and closing part of the road. So typically we'll see water on one side of the road, whether it's west or the north side, and then sewer on the east and the south side, then you keep your separations. But it just kind of depends on the community. For us, it's very difficult to say there's the hard and fast rule for it, because we've got utilities, we've got sewers in the middle of the street and off to one side, they cross at angles. We have to kind of be a little fluid how we respond.
How the new additions, how do we do it? Is there
Typically, we work with the
any-
developers, since we haven't established standard development
Gotcha.
details. as far as a design standards manual. I have for stormwater, but we haven't gone through all these other utilities collectively and say, this is how we want our streets to be designed. I mean, utilities from 10 feet down to the surface, everything, the street lights and trees. There are some communities that have 1,000-page design manuals. We went through and did a little bit for stormwater, and that's probably about 50 pages with materials and design calculation methods, but usually it's pavement profile as far as asphalt, a curb detail, some sidewalk standards, and we're very accommodating to the developers in Decatur. We really are.
I was told that all the, like the gas lines and some of them run behind in the newer additions. Now they say they want to move them all out to the street.
Mm-hmm.
So they want
I've
every...
heard that with electric as well.
Yep.
They want to get stuff out where they can get access to it, because
Right.
when they're in an easement in the rear of the property, it's difficult to get access for their work, and they don't like working in people's backyards particularly because of their equipment, so they're going to say, we want to be out in the street right away because they've got access.
So, and I guess this leads to a question, and if in the future, if somebody comes and they want to plat out a subdivision, knowing that the utilities want that access out front as opposed to along the back property lines, do we require a greater setback? Do we require a bigger easement for utilities that are incorporated into the design of the plat?
We have not modified the setbacks or easement requirements or road right-of-way.
No, I understand, but I mean, in light of what utilities are saying, is that something that...
Should we?
Should we?
Absolutely. No,
That's just more cost for them.
We did that a few years ago. We had 50-foot right-of-ways for the new subdivisions. We did bump that to 60.
with 60.
Right.
That's got at least 10 foot of green space between the sidewalk and the curb.
Yeah.
It still isn't enough.
No.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that, you know, we're getting all these utilities that are crammed into a tight area. You know, at some point, maybe it makes sense for us to talk to the utility companies, maybe sit down with some of the local developers and say, look,
You know? And as part of that, we should consider putting together our standard, what we want for development standards as far as the details, so that the engineers and the developers have a basis of expectation moving forward with it. 70 feet, well, where do we want to put these things so that they work? Because usually on the development plans that come to us, we don't see the gas and we don't see the electric. That's brought in later on, so we don't even know, particularly when they come to the Plan Commission, where those two utilities are going to be. We just assume they're going to be there, but we don't require those locations shown because even the developer doesn't have the final say on where those go. Usually it's a recommendation in their plan as far as where it's going to be.
So if we went from 50 to 60, how long ago, Roger, did we do that?
No, I want to say, the first part of the old Cross Creek's not that big,
But the Meadows is?
but the new part is.
Okay.
It would have been over 2,000 or so was the last year, right?
Yeah, early 2000.
So,
So now we're talking maybe to do an additional 10 or 5 or what?
well, part of it, we're going to have to base it on something.
Okay,
So we're going to
yeah.
have to come up with how much room do we want? So I think would be wise for us to sit down with representatives from CenturyLink, NIPSCO, AEP, to go through what room do they want a typical road cross-section, and say, okay, here's your space, here's our space in a perfect world, and this is what we want to see, no less than X, and then everybody kind of essentially agrees to that, well, and then we kind of move from there.
So do we need to have that meeting with the utility companies?
Somebody will need to schedule that.
We'll talk about it then.
Yeah, certainly.
Would that be true with talking about streetscapes?
Yeah, I mean, on top of all that, where do you want to put your street trees?
yeah.
If you have a streetscape system and you want a certain one for downtown, well, that doesn't apply to a green space development in an urban area where you got potentially, we're talking 70-foot right-of-ways.
Right.
But from a utility standpoint, put the trees on your private property. and not in the utility strip. But that becomes a debate between parks and utility side saying, well, who wants to maintain the trees? I think it would behoove everybody to read how our language reads on street trees and what the city's liabilities are for street trees when they're in our right-of-way versus being immediately behind the sidewalk.
We have full jurisdiction if you're in our right-of-way.
Correct.
We
And
take them down,
take
cut
them
them,
down,
whatever.
trim them,
Yep.
all the rest. But if it's on private property,
And within a certain, our ordinance says within a certain distance, if it's on private property, we'll go on
we can even
private.
go on there and do that because
Yeah.
they're a detriment to the right-of-way. They may
Right.
fall in or
Right.
dropping branches in. So
And I think we
still
can
do
go 10, 15 feet into private property.
it. So,
I showed up at work and
but that's a lot of work, it's a lot of liability, so it's something to consider. It looks good, but we need to realize what that means cost-wise, because that's a lot of expense, a lot of manpower to maintain all these trees. So, but that makes for a good city to have too. So,
such a naysayer.
hate it all. No, I didn't say that.
Panic green.
Well, Nate, that's all I had for you. Now, what do you have for us?
I don't know, what do I have for you?
Thought you had some things you wanted to bring to us.
Oh,
You covered them all?
I think so. I need to get this.
Okay, just that.
This piece here, so.
Ken,
hoping that's all.
Yes,
I don't know how big your agenda is for Board of Works.
not much bigger.
While Nate's here, can we have a brief discussion on, did we ever have a city-county fringe zone? Question was asked by Craig, I couldn't answer.
That has not been established. Where I have a drawing out of my office of an approximate fringe zone. There were early meetings probably back in 2013, 2014, where the county and county council both said that they would be in favor of the city of Decatur establishing a fringe zone.
So we do not have one
But
currently.
we have not established a fringe zone. It would be an act where the city and county would both agree to a fringe zone. There were some discussions on what that would entail, but we never pursued essentially.
Well, what was the reason of the planning commission? We don't have some safeguard in place which is why we expanded the planning commission and
There's supposed to be somebody appointed that can come and attend. They're not a voting member of our association or our plan commission, but they can come from the county and sit in. And I think we have the right to do the
And
same.
we have the right to do the same.
And I think the way it was left, it was, look, let's do this cooperatively without having to formalize it in the form of this, so can we coordinate what the city's doing with the county and make it somewhat standardized? I think the issue that came up that became an issue of concern was, if you have this fringe zone and you extend out for 2 miles, how does that affect farming operations? And that was a major issue that I think caused a little bit of concern on the part of some of the people in the county especially. Is the city now going to impose city zoning requirements 2 miles out that now is going to affect farming operations?
And enforce our ordinances.
Yeah.
That was one of the
Right,
things.
because-
We didn't want to go there.
Right. So, and you've got some people that have said, they might consider coming into the city as long as they still had the right to have horses or farm and, on ground if it's in that area. But, they don't want to be part of it if that suddenly is going to change and they can't use their property the way they're currently using it.
But why did we made changes to the planning commission? What forced those changes?
That was because we hired Nate as a city engineer. And now, under the statute, because we had a city engineer and we have a park, we have a park board, that by statute required us to alter the composition of the board to include a representative from the park board and the
City engineer.
So, and if we were to institute a fringe zone, there would be, I believe, it would be 2 representatives of the fringe zone because they're not represented by the city on the plan commission. So
Yeah, if you have a fringe zone, then there's representation from the county.
Two representation.
Yeah,
two
it
representatives
further
from the
expands
fringe
it.
zone. So it expands the board again to 9 members, I believe. So I think there are answers to many of the questions, but obviously we'd have to try to develop those within our ordinance to kind of satisfy some of the questions. We'd have to kind of flush out some of the issues. It would be helpful to have a fringe zone. Right now, we've been working cooperatively with the county. They send me their agenda regularly, and I just check the list of where the addresses are, and if it's beyond this magical fringe zone or approximate, I don't worry about it. But there's been some issues where a property owner was asking for rezoning in an area that was surrounded by the city for horses in the floodplain, and was actually had built a garage as part of a project prior to getting permitted.
Pickway.
Mm-hmm. You know the area, and so they sent it to me, and I wrote a letter and confirmed some of our concerns as the city with a county project with essentially surrounded by city limits, but not under our jurisdiction, and wrote a recommendation directly to the Planning Commission and copied the Health Department and some others about it, saying that I'm not in favor of granting this variance as a reason for their zoning, and I think that was hopeful. That worked out well. I mean, for what it is.
So currently, if someone wanted to put up a pig farm, duck farm, whatever,
And it's
next to the
zoned
golf
appropriately,
course, they could.
there's really nothing by statute that would stop it.
Right.
It can happen.
Intensive livestock,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things would be pretty...
And there's really nothing you're going to do to stop it. I mean, short of the citizens.
Well, you need to be aware that there's been a lot of push about, at the state level, enacting statutory language that prohibits local communities from stopping that, even if it's right next to its border.
They've already said that Adams County already is too restrictive.
Yeah, I mean,
Can't be more restrictive than...
there's a real push by, the farm organizations to protect farmers from being unduly restricted by city regulation.
Which is funny because they don't have adequate measures to deal with their animal waste when they produce it. So they don't have legal methods.
I understand, but
So
we could
Farm Bureau
do something at the state level, if they enact legislation, it doesn't matter what we did, because they just trumped it.
They've already done that, though, at our county level.
They have.
They have trumped the county's
Exactly.
restrictions on large operation, which seems crazy. But
Yeah, well,
and in the same breath, they want us to clean our waters, so.
there's a lot of things. In fact, I'll talk about a couple of things here in a little bit if we have time.
Yeah. Ann, you wanted to talk to us about some jet pumps for the digester.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nate.
hard to believe, but that digestion system has been out of service almost a year since the jet pumps went down last March. And we've been slowly working towards getting it back into operation. I've got 2 price quotes there for new jet pumps that were, the old ones were ruined by the war. We put a port in the side of the digester because we attempted cleaning the digester, but there was only an opening on the top, and it was so much of a run for the Vector truck that it didn't work very good. So we've now got a manway in the side of it, but it still needs cleaned out. But we've got these quotes, and we figure if we wait, they'll just go up in price. So we only could get 2. That's why I'm here.
But only could get 2 quotes.
2 quotes, yeah. The 36,000 is the low, 48,000 is the high. We reached out, this 48 one is from Ohio. We reached out to New Jersey, but then you were running into territory that were overlapping.
so this is stainless steel versus cast on the thermal.
Yeah. The old one, they tried to fix it and they coated it, but the grit wasn't removed from the digester, so.
With
it
this
ruined it.
new one, so how is grit going to affect them?
Well, we're going to clean out the digester, and we pretty much come to the conclusion that grit is from the river water, so we're not going to start it up till the interceptor's moved.
Budgeted?
Dan said we have the money.
We have the money?
It just comes out of your operating fund.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have a plan, so but you definitely want to go with the stainless steel versus the cast.
Yeah. Now, and I suppose this still needs to be discussed, but I'm thinking possibly we should contract with someone to give us an estimate on putting grit removal at the head of the plant. The digester was in operation 4 years before it was ruined, and obviously it will go longer if the river's not in the sludge. The river grit is not in the sludge. But still, we have grit. I mean, the interceptor, when it was cleaned out, it was full of gravel, and so I'm wondering if we have a screening device, but we don't have grit removal. And
Is there a company that provides grit removal?
Well, there's
Or
contraptions out there to
that
do it. Yeah.
grit removal? So what, expensive?
It'd be, yeah. It'll be expensive, yes.
Hey, and I
It
talked,
won't be a $30,000 pump.
I was talking to Verlin about a week ago and asked him if they had rubber that they could put on the impellers in those pumps.
Yeah.
Did he find out anything about that?
We didn't ask about that yet, no. But, I just think trying to eliminate as much grit as we can. We'd rather not have to take the digester down and clean it every year or even every other year, but that's something we'll have to do if
You can't get rid of the grit?
we'll have to keep checking it to see how it's building up.
Right.
But a lot of treatment plants have grit removal, so I'm not sure why
So
we
you
don't.
said more than 30. How much more? How much? Any idea?
$250,000 to $500,000.
Oh,
Hello.
goodness.
Yeah, depends.
We can buy
How
5 or 6 pumps.
Well,
I was gonna say.
the key is those pumps are not going to last. I mean,
Nope.
prior to the...
No, and we're looking at $36,000, plus the cleaning crew is something like $3,500 a day to clean the grit out.
How often do they do it?
Well, we've just had this system, this would be the first time, but it's a ridiculous amount in there. It might be 3 or 4 feet in there, and it's like concrete. And it's going to be a slow job getting it out. Obviously, we won't let it get that bad again, but all this stuff could add up, How much have, we already put, what was it, 15, 20,000 in that jet pump repairing it
So what,
2 years ago, and it didn't last because we didn't address what we should have, I guess.
when we built the sewer treatment plant, we didn't want to put one in because it
Well-
would have taken us over the pond or
You mean grit
the
removal?
grit removal? And that's
See,
a
they used to have a channel type system that they could clean grit out of it. It's kind of like a foot per second thing. If it's slow enough, it'll drop out. Well, that really doesn't exist anymore. But they have smaller footprint things that would kind of vortex, sort of like the swirl site, that you could get grit out the head of the plant.
How would you, I mean, are you talking about doing that with operating revenues, or are you
Oh,
talking
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there that
Yeah, well,
it might be something we need to look at, and we might be money ahead if you look at the next 20 years, what you'll be doing, maintaining the digester.
I mean, is that something that could be done in the context of a future bond issue where you might be able to incorporate that? It's not going to solve the immediate problem. That kind of money, if you're talking $250,000 to $500,000, I don't know where you're going to come up with that in your operating budget without significantly raising rates just to try to fund that. You know, at some point,
I
we're...
just wanted to bring it up, that there
We
is
should,
something that...
we should buy 10 pumps at a volume discount. And
You got a plan?
keep our replacement
Private ball,
for years.
How long, what's the time of delivery on that pump?
it'll be a couple months.
A couple months?
So 12 to 16 weeks is what it says.
Yeah.
Oh, to get it, the stainless?
Yeah.
They're gonna make it specifically for you essentially, because it's, the pump and the whole housing is as big as that cable. So, it's a large piece of equipment.
I just keep it in the back.
But the bottom line is we need a replacement pump.
Yeah, right now, that's it. That's,
But you don't want to start it until you get the sand cleaned out.
no, and no, we're not going to start it until the
Intercept-
Till the
interceptor is
interceptor,
yeah.
sealed up.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I'd make a recommendation that you check into the rubber pumps. If they have end guts in that, make a recommendation to do that.
To do what, Craig?
That would take care of some of the
We
grit.
used to pump sand 500
Yeah.
yards with specific, and I mentioned that to Berlin about that, checking into the guts being rubber. It lasts a lot longer than stainless, which stainless lasts a lot longer than cast. That there's certain pump internal guts. It's basically a what do you call it? A centrifugal type pump, and it moves the waste.
we can talk to Thermal Process. That's the company that
I'll go visit
designed the
about it.
HVAC,
The only reason I asked
and they've got the low bid, so we'll talk to them before
Okay.
we order.
So is that a coating or is that a whole nother system?
Usually they put it on top of metal.
Yeah, it's probably,
Lining. It's a lining. They put the
It's-
interior and the exterior. I talked to Berlin about it. I'll go visit with him again tomorrow or something.
it's like a,
Somebody else.
it's probably like your pliers, handle of your pliers. It's probably like a plastisol. Does that make sense?
That, or it's a rubber. A rubber that they
A rubber deal.
bond to the
Well,
actual...
I know a plastisol
Parts to test
would
the material.
wear better if you put it on top of the stainless.
I'm not sure what that coating was.
So you'd still use the stainless, but you would coat it with the rubber? Or do you need to use stainless if you're coating it with rubber?
I'm just saying, I think I'd really like to find out a little bit more before we go spend
I don't know.
$6,000 on a stainless steel pump, and if there's
Yeah,
something...
we
that's
can
better
find
than
out,
the-
but this is a process pump. This is kind of a specialized pump, and there's not a bunch of them out there.
Right.
Now, we can find out about some kind of rubberized coating, but if the one that we replaced before was coated, that it was more of a ceramic.
Mhm.
And it
Didn't last.
No.
So is this something we need to
So,
approve tonight, or do you
well,
want to look into it?
Yeah, well, we'll look into it before we finalize the deal, if you want to just
I mean, we can wait
go
another
ahead
2
and
weeks, right?
approve the two quotes, or, it's up to you guys.
Well, I mean, that makes sense that we need to look at that. If there is an option, it would be, basically, we'd be bringing a higher cost option in with the coating.
Possibly, yeah.
But if it gives us longevity, that probably makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So before we authorize anything, I guess I'd request that
Okay.
we see if there is a third option. Because that may be, they may say, well, we can utilize cast with coating as opposed to stainless with coating. I don't know, but
I don't either, that's what, I didn't know if that was...
It's not like you need it right away, because it's not turned on until the two...
Right.
Right, exactly.
so let's do
We're
that.
just kind of
Get the best.
plugging along to get ready, so it is ready to start up when,
Well,
I'm not sure how long the cleaning will take, and we just didn't want to sit on our hands.
no, I
for a
think we're
year.
definitely going to approve a pump, but I think, like Cam said, let's get some more information as far as getting one that maybe, if there is one out there that's more durable than the stainless steel,
I know one concern Berlin had about that rubber coating, the RPMs of this thing is so high, and you didn't know if that was
Well,
available because of that or not.
I'm sure this pump tech or thermal process would know more than about it. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get some more information on durability, because that's what we want. I mean, we're not in the ballpark to put a new grit removal system in at this time, but yet we want a pump that will last more than 2 years.
Oh, most definitely.
So I guess that's where we're at.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, just check it out. And if it's something they can do either way, come back to us and we'll go from there. A few things here that Phyllis has. We need Bill and Cam to sign this. This is a certificate of appointment for Teddy Bessison, our new police officer. And we need you to sign
And then we found one
2 pages,
in New
2 different
Jersey,
times.
but the New Jersey outfit was the one
Territory.
that...
Also, we need to make a matter of record
Ohio outfit.
the easement agreement that we've made with Mr. Franz at the granary, which was over the old part of the old bank property. They've signed off on it, whatever. Just need to make it a matter of record.
Motion to make a matter of record.
Bill?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. There's that, Phyllis. And then lastly, we make each police officer that's new sign a employment agreement for a period of 5 years.
Right.
And Teddy Bessison has signed that, and we need to make this a matter of record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. There you go, Phyllis. Next. We have, for businesses in town, a application. Roger, why don't you come on up here for this? We have an application when a business starts, if they want to put out a sign. Okay? If there's different things that would cost. If you have banners, that's an additional cost. A sign affixed to your building is one price, or maybe a sign that's out in front on a pole is another price. And that has always pretty much been something that the businesses, when they're opening a new business or constructing a new business, that they would take upon themselves in permitting, when they get their permits, to come in and get a permit to put up their signs. But it's nothing that we have actually policed.
It's not hard to regulate on new construction.
Right.
I mean, you get them right up front, tell them,
But if it's an existing building and it keeps changing hands every now and then, and they put up their sign, oftentimes we go on an honor system of them coming in and making it known, okay, or filling out an application, paying the $100 or whatever it might be for their signage. That's worked, but as I talked to Roger today, it sounds as though not every business has done this in good faith.
typically if there's a sign contractor, somebody that builds signs and sells signs,
They know that there's a permitting
There should be
process.
a
they call and they ask and they get the price, there's no issues, but you get somebody that takes a business over and say, I'm gonna build my own sign, or I got a buddy that'll make me a
Should I
sign.
mention names?
So those are the ones that,
Port Oaks, Maine.
they get put up and you never know
We
it.
got some issues.
Well, Bill, you know who I'm talking about. We have a current issue
Right.
where someone on US 27 put out some signs and some banners, and it was somewhat of an obstruction to motorists at intersections, okay? it was brought to our attention, I think Bill went out and called on him, and his reaction to you, Bill?
Well, he moved the one that was out close to the street, and the other ones he just thought he didn't need to get permits for those. So I gave him the permit forms,
Right.
and then I thought, this whole thing actually started when we have people come in and start to sell 4th of July items. They just put all kind of signs around their building that they're selling 4th of July, and I always go out to those buildings and give them a form that, and tell them they need a permit to put up
The
a
sign.
freestanding signs, is what they're called. Well, this person put the same type of flag out that we do for 4th of July.
The fireworks people, once you notify them.
Yep. They,
No issues.
nope.
So the reason for the permits, because it's with regards to our ordinance?
Yeah, because there's setback requirements, there's a number of signs you can have, or number of square footage of signs you're allowed on the lot, there's all kind of different criteria that you can follow that.
And sometimes people come and ask for variances from those requirements.
Yeah.
So now this
Numerous.
particular business has called me twice the last couple of days, challenging why he needs to do this when he knows that there are others along the highway who have never obtained permits for their signs.
I knew this was going to happen, so I went and gave every one of those businesses the same application I gave to him, because I knew he would start that way. And every one of those businesses took care of their flags,
Not necessarily flags, just
their
like,
banners.
or not even necessarily banners. I mean, he questioned me about, for example, another new business that just opened up. I'm not sure what it's called, where the old Rhinelander.
Yanni's.
Gianni's. You give them one, he's got a sign out now.
He's got a sign on the building.
No, he's got a sign out in the front now.
Oh, does he?
Like a banner type thing.
No, I think it looks more like a piece of plywood with Johnny's painted on it or something, but he's got a sign out there.
Well, you can tell him he just hadn't got to
The
it.
tough thing about it is not, I don't know, maybe.
Did you get a sign on your, permit on your signs on your building?
I'm in the county.
You just
But I never knew there was an ordinance for a flag sign. I mean, I guess it's my fault, but you go buy one of those flag signs online and stick it in the ground. I guess if someone comes and tells me I gotta pay for it, I gotta pay for it.
But typically, sometimes you only got them in there for 30 days if you're running the special.
Right, you run special, you put it out
These
there.
guys are putting them up there and they're permanent signage for them.
And the
Wendell
one
take
Bill's
care of them
talking about
Eventually.
is
And then we got that to deal with.
Vape
you know.
shop.
you're on a
Best
different
pizza in
street, and you're
town.
at an intersection, and you're
Pizza
trying to turn out,
They got
you're creating a whole other safety issue that's a liability issue, I mean, in my eyes, but
Typically, that's why we have
that's
those
what you have
type
the
of
ordinance, so you
provisions.
can tell them what to do with them, I understand, but I never knew there was an ordinance for it.
But then this kind of, to me, evolves into our sign ordinance, period. If you recall, a few years ago, when Charlie Brune came with, this is what downtown Decatur looked like 25 years ago, and this is what it looks like now, boring. Wouldn't we rather it look, where he had an old gas station sign, he wanted to put a big ice cream cone or whatever, and our ordinance is too restrictive to let that. Icorn Jory has a sign this way, now the other ones are, because it's old. If we were to replace it, the way I read it, it could stay that way. But now all the signs are flat on the building and more generic, I guess. So do we want
Yeah, because
to?
our sign ordinance says the leading edge of the sign has to be 5 feet back from the front property line. Well, the downtown buildings are the front property line.
Right.
There is
Do
no...
we want it to say that, or do we want to change it?
Well, the reason those are put out, it's the same example we have with Josh Krickenberg out there on the highway. He has his property line. He actually put his sign out
Too close to the...
too close to the setback for the highway, okay? And people were complaining that when they pulled up that corner, they looked down and couldn't see around it. Well, Roger and I both went out there, and we told him that we didn't feel it was that bad. because you could actually see down the highway. But we did force him to come in and get a variance for that sign, and he was very cooperative and did it. I mean, but that's the reason for sign ordinances, so that they don't stick out and obstruct views.
Well, and the other thing you have to understand is back when, and I don't recall, I don't think we changed anything on the sign ordinance when we recodified the code, did we, Roger?
No, not this.
But, you know, if you look at the provisions for downtown signage, part of that was attributable to the fact that at one time US 27 ran down and 33 still did until they did the bypass, so those were regulated highways by the state, and they had certain
Maybe that's when it
requirements.
changed.
Yeah.
So now that this is a local road and it's no longer under the jurisdiction of the state, you know, maybe some of those requirements aren't necessary as they once were.
Yeah, you know, like Monroe Street here, the state, no, you can't put nothing out on the right of way. Keep it off of there.
Yeah.
So like Two Brothers sign,
Yeah.
grandfathered because
Yeah, you
if
could never
they
do
wanted to do a
anything.
new sign, they couldn't
Yeah.
do it. See, and I think it looks attractive, appealing.
So,
Can I speak to this?
Please.
Well, Craig Kitson, I'm on the planning commission, we dealt with this. The issue that Charlie brought up in his location for the old 27 ice cream shop, part of his issue had to do with, he's a corner lot, and on a corner lot you have to deal with two front setbacks, and the front setbacks are further and deeper than a side setback would be. Now, because he was going to put up a historically accurate sign, Plan Commission would have granted, or the BZA would have granted a variance because of the situation, but Roger was dealing with the line items in the code saying you can't do that. To my knowledge, Charlie never came in and applied for the variance.
Charlie's position was that the ordinance should be signed so that he didn't even have to ask for a variance.
But again, he's in a downtown area that used to be a federal right-of-way. Josh Kirkerberg's also had to deal with federal right-of-ways for being a federal highway and those types of things. So sign ordinances are very difficult to deal with. Now, I also must disclose that I sell signs. So, in addition to that, it's part of my business. And we sell temporary signs and banners and that type of thing. Thank you, political candidates. And that brings a whole nother angle to this, is what happens during political sign season. So, the sign ordinance is a huge can of worms.
It is. I mean, just like your downtown, it's like Matt's saying, I said, those ones hanging out look nice. Well, then the next guy, I'm putting up a 4x8 one, bigger and out farther, and next thing you know, he's blocking his sign.
Right.
But now they're seeing my photos, and well, the next guy.
But
you know,
again,
where's
like the
stop?
old Rexall drugstore and like that added character to a town.
But that's the whole point, is by virtue of having an ordinance, if somebody comes and what they're proposing is attractive, is going to be mounted properly, is not going to interfere with other signage or obstructing views, then the BZA has the ability to allow that by granting a variance. If the next person comes along and is proposing something that's not appropriate or unsightly or not going to be secured properly or is going to stick way out, they can deny that variance. And that's the advantage
The
of
way
having that.
the way I took Charlie's position was he didn't want a rule changed because it was him applying. He just thought the rules should
Well,
be
if you want a
easier to live with.
historical part of town to put the historical types of signs up or something like that, so be it, but you just can't be doing that anywhere.
well, so I think that probably brings up that we ought to look at the sign ordinance and spend the time.
Even though it's not easy.
It's the same thing as
not easy.
it's the same thing as the bicycle on the,
Sidewalk.
the bicycle on sidewalk ordinance. I mean, does it make, maybe it made sense at one time, but
If it doesn't now,
maybe we need to look at that again. But this doesn't get to the question of why we started this conversation,
Thank you.
which is enforcing the current.
could the state go in and tell that guy to take his flag sign down
Probably. The way Roger talked.
when they get around to it?
When they get around to it.
But,
Well, that's what they do with political signs. They just go and take them.
Sure.
he was pretty much like threatening to me today that, if you're going to enforce this on me, then all whistle blow on everybody up and down 13th Street, and, you know, almost like a threat.
Most of them take them down, Bill, or does anybody pay for it?
Everybody took them down except for Burger King.
Theirs are gone.
Theirs are gone.
The gal called me and I
And,
explained it to her, and she said,
Okay.
well, let's take them down then. I go,
well, because we went in with it and filed an ordinance a violation to these two people, the place on the corner of Dayton and 13th Street, and Burger King, we served ordinance violations on them? Okay. So they took them down.
she called me and I explained the situation, and she said, okay, it sounds to me like just be easiest, take them down.
And everybody else took them down, okay? And all of a sudden, I looked down the street, and the car wash put one back up. So, but everybody else took them down, you're right. And one company actually wanted to pay for it and wanted to know how to go about doing that. And I told Sharon to get a hold of them and do that. So, but these are called freestanding signs, is all they are. So, and the reason they do that, I'm sure, the reason we have an ordinance for that is so they don't put them out to the highway.
and
Or so
our-
they don't put 10 on their property. I mean, can you imagine how obstructive that would be?
Well, you know, that might, depending on where that fits into your definition of freestanding sign, I mean, that could be an informational or directional sign, you know, hey, arrow exit here, drive in here, drive through there. Or, because the ordinance says you're allowed to have one freestanding sign per lot.
Okay.
And I take it, that's the big, say, hey, here's your, you know, here's my type of business sign. Is that, some of them banner signs, I'd never read one of them, I have no clue what to even say, you know, welcome or hey,
Like
come
going
in
to
or
town,
whatever, I don't know
I
which
see
one.
vape shop,
Yeah,
right over here.
yeah.
First thing you see.
Yeah, that sign ordinance is a tough cookie, we've dealt with this before, and it's,
Is there anything to restrict, like you'll see like a balloon, like a guy dancing around or something, you see some places?
Those are actually called dancers.
yeah.
I mean, the problem you run into is the enforcement mechanism. Are we going to hire people to go around and enforce all these?
Yeah.
We have it.
I understand.
No, you need
But
a
you're talking about doing a lot more than
You
what
need a
Bill's
full-time
capable of
zoning
doing.
enforcement officer.
Oh, hey.
I think, what's the question? What are we going to do about it?
I can go back to this gentleman and tell him, hey, regardless of what everyone else that you think has done up and down this highway, if you're going to put a sign on your business, it's $100. If you're going to have flag signs out there, it's $20 a piece. That's it. End of story. Pardon?
It's $20 per flag.
Per flag. That's what I'm well, plus
Each-
his sign on the building.
Yeah, your main sign's like
$100.
$100, and then each additional, whether directional sign or whatever, is $20.
Yeah. So he's probably, right now,
No, one time deal.
mm-hmm.
This guy's been
Yeah.
a habitual problem.
Over the
When
last,
he had a business downtown Decatur, never once was confronted about having to, he had a sign.
And even- yeah.
Nobody ever told him he had to have a permit for it.
And
He says, I never had a permit down when I was downtown.
And not to make an excuse for me, this whole thing started when he put one out at the highway, okay? And he moved it. Okay, but he doesn't understand why the other ones, they're freestanding, and he needs permits for those. And the only thing I told him is, and that's where it started, is when somebody comes in and sells 4th of July material,
years ago, well, they've been that many years ago, like 10 years ago, they always used to have these metal frame things with the lit where you stick the letters in, had an arrow on the thing, lit up arrow flashing. There was 39 of those on 13th Street. From the John Deere dealership.
I believe it.
Out to, there was 39 of them. You know what them look like after a couple of years? Pretty soon half the bulbs would burn out and the letters won't stick in, and the sign's rustier and crap, and there it sits. And where'd they always stick them? Out as close to the road as you could get them. Intersections, it didn't make a difference whether, you know, even the place where you're pulling out of the parking lot, you had to pull, you know,
Yeah,
certain
get
vehicles
around
right
it.
in the line of sight. And I sent them all letters, told them to get rid of them.
Okay.
I don't know if I had the right to do that, but 90% of them went away. Because they were junk. I mean, they were junk. No.
Purpose of the permit is to ensure that they're in compliance with the ordinance, correct?
But we're not enforcing everyone to get a permit.
Are they in violation of the ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
They're in violation of the ordinance because they don't have a permit, or because they don't meet the guidance that's outlined in the ordinance? So, you know, what's the violation? Violation is they didn't pay for a
First off,
permit.
they need a permit. If they'd got a permit, they wouldn't have that violation.
But why does the permit exist? The permit exists to ensure that they're in compliance.
Right. Because if you didn't have permits for signs, Cam, you'd be overwhelmed with signs. You go down the street, you couldn't even read a sign, there'd be so goddamn many of them. It'd be
This
so,
situation is by pulling a permit, the city then has the right to say, you can't put that sign right there on the corner so that someone can pull out on 13th Street and get
I understand,
liability.
but if I haven't pulled a permit, but my sign is in compliance with the ordinance,
You still don't have a right to have that there because you didn't pull a permit where.
And there's a lot of those, it sounds like. Potentially, there could be a lot of those, because we've entrusted people when they open a new business to come in and see if there's any other permits they need to do when
the
they...
banner signs they put on the inside of the windows and crap, we don't deal with any of that stuff. But if it's affixed to the building, or if it's a directional sign, or if it's a freestanding sign out by the road, it becomes a safety issue in a lot of cases. And
Do you have a record of all
Yeah,
those?
that's my next
Hmm?
question.
Do you have a record of all those?
Paid for a permit?
in the last 4 years, we issued 39 sign permits, and the total cost of the signage that was put up was $142,200.
Signs are expensive.
They're expensive.
Hold on, say that again, Roger.
There
In
was
4 years,
Last 4 years, there was 39 total, places that had sign permits, totaling $142,200. Now, that's not the permit cost.
Right, that's the value of the...
The signage.
Yeah.
Correct. I don't have the permit cost down,
There's no way to tell, like, you're going down 13th Street, which ones were paid for.
Exactly.
Well, you did do some research, you could find that out, but
You could.
he's welcome to come up and go through the permits if he wants. Care. I ain't
It's
doing
all
it.
on file and something
Yeah.
like that. It's just on that.
Tim, can you advise me on what to tell this gentleman?
Well, I mean, whether somebody else complied or not, if we have knowledge that they didn't, then we should send them a notice that
Right,
they
and that's
didn't.
what we did.
So if he knows of other people and he wants to share that information, then we'll follow through with it.
Okay, and he's
We're not-
asked, okay, does he have a right to know if people have, like he's shouted out to me probably 10 different places. Did this place get one? Did this place get one? I said, I don't know, I have no idea.
Well,
Well,
are they talking,
obviously he won't call me anymore.
well, is he talking about recent placements of signs, or is he talking about signs that have been there for whenever?
Both.
Well, he
Like
can
I said,
come in,
Johnny's is one.
he can come in and he
Doug,
can come
come
in
and talk
and
to
research
me.
that himself. I mean,
Okay.
it's all public record.
All right. We'll
If
take
he's
care of
got
it.
it, he wants to get it pulled.
Right.
So like if a place has a sign up and then they put up a banner that says now serving breakfast, they're supposed to know that they're supposed to come up here and pay
Typically,
20
that's a
bucks.
temporary thing, if they put something up, say, hey, I've had people call and say, hey, I'm gonna put this out there, it's gonna be for 30 days. Go right ahead and put her out there, I don't care, that's not gonna affect, I said, just make sure it doesn't obstruct view.
In what business is he talking about, where the sports line used to be?
Yeah, that was one of them.
There is a sign out there now?
I guess there is, yes.
And Roger
And I'm not aware of him coming in and getting a permit.
And Roger just pointed out he's allowed one?
One,
He's got one on his building.
huh?
He's got one on his building,
And you're allowed one freestanding sign.
Freestanding,
Without
so,
a permit or?
With the, everything has to be permitted.
So if he's got a sign out there that hasn't been permitted, then he should be noticed up that he's in violation, and he's,
Is it
get
a
a
new
permit.
one, or,
I don't know.
I don't either.
if it's an old sign that's existing,
I mean, and I guess the other thing is,
90% of them, I let
if
them
this gentleman
replace them,
says something
and I
about
let
this
them
sign or that
use it.
sign, we'll say, if you think there's a violation, we'll check it out.
Okay, I'll take care of it, thank you.
yeah.
Nate, did you have something else then?
Yeah, you hinted like I had something, and I got that too.
Yeah. Roger, did you have anything else while you're here? Thank you, Roger.
Yep. We talked before about doing environmental investigations of the properties on First Street. We had quotes from EMS and Barton Environmental Consulting to look at all the properties along First Street. But since we're looking at different funds for different properties, I asked EMS to modify their quote to simply look at the Rice, Ortiz, and Masters garages. And they've amended their proposal to saying not to exceed $4,000 if we wanted to proceed with investigations for those three structures for demolition under the project. So
For an environmental hazard.
Yeah, so we're looking for asbestos. We don't anticipate it with either the two garages, but there's some questions as far as what we might encounter with the Rice property. So with the potential closing on that.
So you're including the ones that are going to be funded through...
The sewer, yeah. So that's what we're looking at there.
So the other ones need to be done as well.
We can under the same contract if we wanted to, but we have to essentially, if we want to split those, that's a question as far as how we want to approach those.
We have to do environmental studies on these?
We're going to tear them down.
Is that phase 1 and 2 or phase...
This is all part of
$4,000.
Well, just phase 1, essentially. Well, there would be some sampling, so it would be quantified technically.
I was in the impression that those three buildings to the south have already had...
Did we do phase 1 studies on some of the buildings?
Some of the buildings we have, not Loshi. We did for Affolter. I don't believe that we did for the Macklin building to the south, and we haven't for Masters, Ortiz, or Rice.
So these are for
So
which
it was
one?
Rice, Ortiz, and Mark's Heating.
Ortiz's garage and Mark's garage.
So we need to go ahead and get that going, but then we need to circle back and...
Come back around and what do we want to do for the buildings to the south. The total I had from Barton Environmental Consulting for all of them was a $7,000 proposal.
That's all of them?
That was for all of them. But if we just want to look at part of it, I got one number quickly today from EMS, not to exceed 4,000. He's like, that'll easily cover us doing the investigation, but he's expecting it to be less than that. So I can go back to Barton.
The John was using to get those?
Yeah.
Yeah, Papike.
Pardon?
That's the EMS was a firm that had done some of those.
No, we used Matt Vonner to do his properties on First Street.
Yeah, Vonner was doing those through a grant that has since run out.
He would have a record of what was done, wouldn't he?
Correct, and I have some of the copies of those.
Okay,
But
so
I
you know
believe
which
it-
properties were done.
I've got those sitting in the file, but I believe
We're not doing the same
it's just
thing.
the Affolter. We're not redoing any of the properties. We're not, it was
It's
Schaefer and Affolter is what I understand.
Over 2,000?
And then there were other buildings that have been done under the grant, but those weren't on First Street.
Okay.
Is there reason to expect that
it's over 10.
by doing all of it at the
I
same
guess
company at
this
the
is
same
the
time, we're going to
third
save
one.
money?
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah. If we can
But we
try
just
to
need
do
to
them
pay
all-
for
If we get all of them, we'll just get them all done, and we'll get one report that'll have everything
Maybe
together.
he's not doing them
Less likely
I think you said
we'll
the whole
lose
thing
one
was
piece of it.
seven.
Well, then he is.
It'd be better off if we should do them all together.
But not like earlier on that one, but it was because it had a contract.
Is it possible for them to break that down then by building?
Yeah.
So we can bill the other half to...
I think that's...
I can when he finally invoices it, because right now what he's working under is essentially, he's going to come up with an approximate time, he can log his time, and then we could see when he gets his final invoices, how much time he spent on different structures, and then we could split that.
Based on the preliminary quote from all of them, it looks like $3,000 for the other half.
Yeah.
Nate, are those contracts or they're just proposals?
These are just essentially quotes for one. We actually have a proposal here that's with the signature, so this one would be a contract.
Whenever, I mean, on the sewer project stuff here, like this right here, is this something he needs to come to us for? I mean, it's under the dollar
No,
amount.
but he's bringing up the point that he's going to spend his own money on the buildings he's responsible for purchasing under the bond. And what he's highlighting is the fact that there's 3 more properties that need to be taken care of through other sources.
Okay.
Can we do it all under the same contract and split the billing?
I
That's
the issue.
Okay.
Or can you do two separate contracts with one worker?
And the contracts themselves should be approved, and somebody should be authorized to sign. It's
Is this-
normally you sign it.
Is this a Board of Works function?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not even a contract, it's just a,
Essentially, these are just quotes. So,
I thought you said there was a...
well, one of them
You got a
lists-
proposal?
one list as a proposal here,
Well-
but this one is dated from December 3rd. So some of these are starting to set for a while. So once I know how we want to proceed with it, I'll verify that and make sure that they're still willing to stand behind their numbers.
Let's make a motion. I'll make a motion that you proceed with those quotes and give the mayor authority to sign any proposal.
Okay.
And then, like Cam said, when the billing comes in, then at that point you can
Then
separate.
break those all
break-
out
right.
so that everybody sees where their
Right.
time went.
Exactly.
But we'll probably need to bring this up at council, right? And approve not to exceed 3,000 by council.
on the one, for the ones that are under the capital improvement.
Sure. I have one other contract here regarding wetland inventory, essentially a wetland delineation. This is from Williams Creek Consulting. I've had some difficulty getting proposals from environmental consultants and this season to look at the area we're proposing for our sewer interceptor project. Primarily, their growing season is April to September, and so that's when they prefer to do it. I couldn't find another of the 2 or 3 environmental firms that I talked to. They all wanted to wait until April to do the work. This is the one that one of the firms has talked to Brian Catt with Williams Creek, and they're willing to do the wetland investigation and do a delineation in this time of year. And he's given me one proposal, and unfortunately, that's all that I have for the wetland delineation work. We can wait a little bit. I can try a couple more firms to see what I can find.
How much?
Shoot, I didn't remember. I didn't write it down. Ken, what is the total not to exceed that he listed on that contract?
Natural resource assessment was $4,650, that's a lump sum, and then $3,000 for on-call consulting.
So just a little over
Time and
7,000.
material estimated.
A total of 7,340, you said?
And get other quotes.
And they'll assist us through the
But we don't
permitting,
have-
through the
for the
DNR
price.
and Army Corps.
He doesn't need our approval.
Used to say all the time.
Even for the 7, yeah.
Wetland delineation for where?
This would be for the area on the Stanley property and along the riverfront where we're going to be doing an interceptor relocation
Okay.
for the sewer project.
So he
from
can't
Dwight
get to
down
what you're
to
saying.
Jefferson Street,
The
essentially
two
that
quotes he
area where we'll
can't
be.
get
It wouldn't
at
be
this time.
significant in the areas where we're demolishing the buildings, but when we're in the
For
grass
this, he needs
areas,
to get 2
we're
quotes.
concerned that we
Yeah,
might have
but we don't-
wetlands.
We don't need to
Get it right
approve
there.
it.
Unlikely, but
He
we
needs
still
to
have
know
to do
that.
our due
Then he
diligence.
he can only get one right now. He said he has to wait till April to
Yeah.
get another one.
I mean, we're just looking at the purchasing requirements. I mean, you have to have 2 quotes,
Okay.
but we don't have to approve it. Up to $10,000 is department head approval.
Is it?
Up to 10,
Yeah. One's $9,999, department head approval with 2 quotes. Right?
So, okay, sorry, my mistake. So, but, what?
But was that,
You still have to have 2 quotes.
but he was here requesting how to spend the funds, so I think, right?
Well, on this,
On which
on the
one? This one is-
wetland delineation,
He just needs-
essentially just approval to move forward with the single quote because of my,
Okay.
the schedule.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This
Okay.
is paid down the
That's
sewer
right.
line.
And this will be
That's
part of
what
the sewer
I'm saying.
line.
Oh,
You
the
can't-
sewer
you
line.
can't
There's
get
a
a second
provision
quote.
that if you can't get a second quote,
Then we
you
have
go
to-
with it.
Approve it,
Approve.
go,
Right.
move forward.
yes, I think that's what he's asking.
Right. I'll make that approval. You want to get going on it?
Yeah, it'll keep us in line with our schedule.
Okay.
So. no.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Bill, Cam, Tim, any other business that you have? Make them look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Adjourn. Convene in a few minutes.